safe, keep you in these castle walls. And it's really concerned with creating and protecting this self-identity around your self-worth, who you are and who you're not, your self-identity, and your social status. Oh no, I can't do that. I might lose face.
Yeah.
So ego is always going to resist this wild primal part of us that just wants to merge into another or into life itself.
Yeah.
Right? It's always going to resist. Ask anyone who's ever tried to meditate or go into any sort of spiritual state whatsoever. They have to get past their ego guards first. Their ego resists. This is
That's
how it
true.
works. But there's this other organ of the psyche, if you like. If ego is an organ of the psyche, just like, we have lungs and hearts and stomachs, each does a different job, and yet they make up our whole of our body, our consciousness. My story is, I like to make stories so that I can understand things. My story is that the psyche is made up of all of these little organs that have different voices, and each has its genius and each has its blind spot. We need to know how to interact with them. So ego has its genius. It keeps us separate and we can protect ourselves and we know how to have boundaries and we have a sense of self because of it. But it also keeps us separate so we can't connect. We can't move from I to we,
Mm.
right? It stops us. So its job is limited there. So another organ of the psyche that creates desires comes and whispers little love letters in its ears. It says, and says, "Oh, ego, darling, you're afraid of losing your social status. Oh, you're afraid of your self-worth, that maybe they don't really want you as much as you thought they did. Are you sexy enough? Oh, no, we can't risk rejection. That would be, horrific. We'll just stay in the castle walls. Oh, no, you're afraid of that." So Desire says, "Okay, I'll tell you a little story. I'll tell you a little story that includes all of your fears of what you think would happen if you opened and was vulnerable enough to connect. And I'll also include the exact antidote to those fears." so
What?
that you can so that you can transform, so that you can, if you can't transform something you don't include. You have to
Right.
include a symbol of your fear of your identity being crushed, and then having it be resolved. So in the end result is the exact opposite of it being crushed. You're actually celebrated, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But you have to include or you can't transform. That's how alchemy works, right?
You're
Poison
so
plus
true.
antidote equals transformation. And so these sexual fantasies were showing me, oh, this is a wonderful way of actually navigating these states of consciousness. They're really clever and they're not meant to make sense. They're not meant to be something that are literal instructions for us to go and live out in the outside world. They're literally just stories to convince our ego it's safe to be vulnerable.
Mm.
That's what it is. What can we learn from that? That's amazing. It's
Um,
resolved a paradox of, because that paradox that I was talking about before is I've got to protect myself. I've got to prioritize myself. I've got to put my boundaries in this. I've got to be safe versus desire, which is like, nah, take all the risks. Let all of your guns come down.
Forget these rules.
Come on, if you want to feel love, if you want to risk love, if you want to risk intimacy, if you want to risk pleasure, if you want to risk spiritual connection, you have to let your guards down, and it is risky. If any form of vulnerability is terrifying to that ego. But desire and ego is both correct. That's what a paradox is. It's two correct things in conflict with each other, in contradiction to each other. You do need to protect yourself, and you do need to let your guards down in order to be vulnerable, in order to be able to access intimacy and pleasure. So
Mm.
that's what a paradox is. How do we deal with this? And these, taking a closer look at these sexual fantasies actually showed me how we can resolve this sort of paradox everywhere in our life. Like
Yeah.
it showed me. I just want to really quickly touch on the other two paradoxes because I know we can only touch on this because we have only got a short amount of
I
time. But I
know, but
hope,
they're so juicy. Okay, keep going. Yeah.
yeah. So the other two paradoxes just inherent to sex, because people make the mistake of thinking that they must have sexual fantasies because they've got childhood trauma or unfinished business. But even if you, this is my theory. This is how a groundbreaking theory that therapists are loving, by the way. um, that we don't have sexual fantasies because of our childhood unfinished business, although that stuff can come into our sexual fantasies. Even if we lived in the most perfect society that was sex positive, you never had any shame, you didn't have anything to resolve, just the inherentness of the way sex works would still contain these paradoxes that need resolving in order for you to be able to access these altered states, these expanded states, these heart expanding, these mind changing, body igniting states.
Mm.
So the second one is self versus lover, right?
Wow, yeah.
So should I be focusing on your needs or my needs? Your needs are different to mine because your ego is different to mine. So your ego needs a different set of turn-ons in order to overcome your resistance to letting go so we can connect. But I need you in order to feel safe. I need you to be turned on by my turn-ons, damn it. Otherwise, I'm not safe. What do you mean yours are different to mine? Oh no. Does that
We're
mean we're not
giggling, but this is
compatible?
like a real thing, right? We're giggling, but this is real. Like this is something where it's okay. I want to meet your desires, and but I also don't want to do that at the sacrifice of myself, right? And then so it creates the tension in which it I don't know. Maybe again, you would know this better than I do, but it's that tension in which it becomes the attraction and maybe the distraction. I don't know. For me, that's kind of becomes distracting if I feel like I'm still in protection mode and trying to enter into those things.
You're onto it. It's absolutely the paradoxes are beautiful opportunities, but they can block us if we don't know how to navigate them. If we know how to navigate them, they're the source of friction that creates the turn on and can take us both to these wonderful states of consciousness we're trying to get to together.
Yeah.
But we have to actually engage the difference intentionally because people who are not aware about that, they don't know how that works. They think that they break up. The one partner ends up pleasing the other one because they don't want to harm the other person's ego. They're really like, oh, I can see that person just put on all of their best efforts for my benefit, and they touched me gently, and they made me feel like a goddess, and they worshipped me, and they were reverent, and they were so, and they even went and learnt special massage touches and lit candles, and it was so lovely. And now they've gone to all of this effort. How do I tell them that actually I just really want them to throw me down and be primal and bite my neck and be rough and pull my hair? How do I tell them that the soft touch was beautiful and touching, but not a turn on?
Yeah.
So they don't. So they never tell them. And then as they don't tell them, and they're just like, thank you, that was amazing. And you know, that thing that happens after sex, where the person who was the one that was more predominantly trying to do and mind read, the other person is the person who says then, so how was that for you, babe? And what do
Oh,
you, how do you even answer that? How do you even, like, how can you, like, the pressure for you to say, oh my God, that was the best sex I've ever had in my life is enormous. Thank you so much. I loved it. Right. And the pressure to not say, actually, what I need is enormous. So, so many people are wandering around with this paradox of self versus other. And we do it in every area of life, not just sex. But sex
yeah.
is this
I see this
concentrated form of
very
it.
much in like client mentor type relationships and but even like yeah teacher relationship but also like that parent relationship even there I see that and and it is, I think, but also especially I feel amongst women is that friendship relationship, like how much does it mean to be a friend, but and then whose desires are getting met, and how do I say, yeah, that may be something you like, but hello, do you even know me over
Mm.
here, right?
Do you see
So
me?
it's very much, yeah, because it does feel that some ways to too is like, well, if they haven't, they haven't figured it out by now that I like three smacks on the butt and two, two, right? Like if they haven't figured it out by now, then you give up.
Mm.
Maybe it's that what you're saying when that separation happens.
Yeah, too. And because eventually that person who was quiet the whole time, and I'm not blaming them because the pressure is enormous. Like the way that this is a pattern that we all fall into. It's not just them over there, it's us, right?
Yeah.
So this is a thing that happens though, but if eventually your own needs need to be met, and if you leave it and suppress it and suppress it and suppress your own desire over and over and over and over again, eventually your desire busts on through and grabs the steering wheel. It says,
Mhm.
I need it my way. And that's when people will say, and I'm not kidding, I have real life examples of this all over the place in my own friend circles and amongst my clients, where they'd end up divorcing because the person who had suppressed their desire finally speaks up, finally, and says, oh my God, I really need it this way. And the other person is devastated, devastated. Oh my God, what do you mean? All of that thing that I was trying to do for you, did you lie to me for all of those years? I, I feel betrayed. I feel embarrassed and humiliated. I thought I was doing all of this for you. And then they go, well, what do we do now? And they just end it because they can't
Wow.
find any way of reconciling from there. But that it doesn't have to end there. When you understand how desire works and you have some tools in place, everybody can have their difference and get their needs met too. It's taking a deeper understanding about how this works. But that, and then learning how to do it in the playground of sex teaches you how to do it everywhere else in business, in all of your other kinds of relationships as well. Because, well, set play, like, that's what children do. That's